Hello, everyone. I'm here to give you a brief primer on chapter 1. This chapter is on trust, partnership, and social justice. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that ecology of education, defining that family, professional partnerships, trust and braving, the sunshine model, and social justice. So the chapter that you read from the Turnbull text breaks up the ecology of education into 3 different categories. The social justice sources, that includes constitution, civil rights, activism, and federal laws. The environment, so I'll show you on the next slide these 3 concentric circles of these sources, which include communities, schools, homes. These are the contexts for partnerships, and people, including community members, professionals, families, and students, who are the actors or the people who give life to trusting partnerships. So as you can see here on this video, all 3 of those different components are broken down in the different shades of yellow of the circles, starting with that student in the center and working all the way out to the Constitution. So there's so many pieces that really make up the ecology of education. I think this is an important thing to consider when we think about our students in our class. We have to think about all these additional circles that are influencing that student's life, that student's success in your class, and their family as a whole in a system. So when we think about trust, I have a great video that I linked in your folder for class 1 asynchronous work on Brene Brown, who I think is just phenomenal. And if you don't know Brene Brown, I highly recommend that you look into some of her work. But she has come up with this acronym that is the anatomy of trust. And I'm not going to go through each of it here, but I have these resources for you to read about. And if you're interested, to watch Brene Brown talking about this acronym of braving and how it works together to really facilitate trust. So when we think about trust, it's, a lot of times people often claim this is so important. It's easy to answer that trust is a really important part of that parent-professional relationship. But then when we pull back the layers, what is it that we're talking about? How do you begin to build this trust? And the chapter gives us some ideas around cognitively, affectively, and behaviorally. So cognitively, really thinking with your heads. This is we're thinking about what are the family's thoughts about the school, about you as a teacher, and how those thoughts complement or collide with their own values, beliefs, and experiences. Because we remember, as I think about all of you coming into our class together, into our learning community, we're all bringing our own lived experiences in with us, and those can't really be separated. So we have to spend time being patient, thinking about those things, and sometimes really allowing that tension to be there until we build over time this issue of trust when those things start to be less important, less influential. They're always important, but less influential on our relationship. Affectively, thinking with their hearts consists of families' positive, which may be their confidence, acceptance, admiration, and negative, which could be fear-based, could be rejection or disfavor emotions that they experience in regards to interactions with or thoughts of you. So again, that think, feel, act cycle, I think I'm going to go over in my next slide, is in play in every circumstance of our lives, but certainly in play with every interaction we have with our families. And then behaviorally, interpreting your actions and interactions. So this enables families to merge their head and their heart in noting how you interact with them. So whether or not you listen or point out their child's strengths. So we're going to be practicing both of those skills this semester together because they're so, so important in terms of building this trust with families. So as I mentioned, this, if you haven't heard of this again before, this is a really crucial knowledge piece about ourselves and helps us in understanding other people, is that knowing that what you think impacts how you feel, which impacts what you do. So think, feel, act cycle, or think, emotion, behavior. And so knowing that that is a cycle that happens instantaneously in our minds, in our bodies, in our brains, in our hearts, and in our actions is really important when we consider that what we're thinking is going to influence so much of what we do. And then in between there, we have this broad range of emotions. So we'll kind of refer back to this cycle throughout the semester and how we can intervene at different places. So they talk about a trusting family professional partnership being an alliance in which families and professionals confidently build on each other's word, judgment, and wise actions to increase educational benefits for students and themselves. So obstacles to trust. So barriers to strong family school relationships with diverse families. So families who have different backgrounds from your own. Some of these, this comes up from Cullen, Colorado, as a resource. And we're going to talk a little bit about that website and really I'm going to give you some time to look at some of the articles because they're really beneficial when it comes to building trust with families. But when you think about this list, when you look at them, bad first impressions, poor communication, past experience, family members' lack of self-confidence, teachers' lack of self-confidence, a history of discrimination, differing expectations of the parent-teacher roles, and lack of confidence in the school. When you look at this list that research shows are often noted as barriers that impact families from diverse, culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, relationships with professionals, which one of these, or which several of these, do you think you've had personal experience with showing up in your own interactions with families? So I'm going to give you a chance to think about that and respond in another space. So research on the nature of partnerships, we know that trust is central, integral, and necessary for the development of partnerships between administrators, teachers, and parents. When parents or professionals do not consider the other party to be trustworthy, it is common and likely for conflict. It is common and likely for conflict. And so think about that in your own life. When have you had interactions with professionals, medical professionals, or other professionals in different contexts where you did not feel like you could trust them or that they did not feel trustworthy to them? And then think about what kind of conflict arose in your relationship with them, or what kind of barriers were put up that might have impacted you receiving quality care, let's say if it was a medical professional. So to really address this, they have come up with the Sunshine Model, and they talk about these 5 components that are absolutely essential for the sun to shine. And then when it combines, it implodes to be this trusting partnership. So they talk about the need for equity, respect, communication, advocacy, and commitment are all necessary to form that trusting partnership. And then on the outside, you have these different spaces where we have opportunities in the school setting to really act on these partnership dimensions or practices, as we used to call them. So they talk about in the academic learning space, there's so many opportunities within social emotional learning, within behavior. So how are we talking about behavior? How are we talking with, how are we perceiving our students' behavior and talking about that with their families? Student assessment, special meetings, IEP meetings, parent-teacher conference meetings, like you're going to have in the immersion simulation, student transitions, school capacity enhancement. And so these 5 dimensions, as I mentioned, all work together to create that trust at the center. And this is probably the biggest part that I wanted to get across, that's bringing in some outside content to make this sunshine model really make sense in the context of your school and as being a teacher in a school and in context of your relationship with families. But first, this is a handout I got from a TASH conference way, way long ago in DC, but it's talking about the culture of inclusion in our schools. And so if you do not have, so it's saying in this diagram that you need vision, you need skills, you need incentives, you need resources, you need actions in order to have successful inclusion. And when you take away vision, you have confusion. And when we take away skills, we have anxiety. When we take away incentives, we have resistance. When we take away resources, we have frustration. Say it with me now. And when we take away action, you just feel like you're running on a treadmill, not getting anywhere. So I took this concept of the necessary components to have X. So A, B, and C equals D. And so I took these and applied it to the sunshine model. So as we read in chapter 1, you need equity, respect, communication, advocacy, and commitment in order to have trust. You need them all interrelatedly to be able to have a trusting family professional partnership. So when you take away advocacy, you have no action. When you take away communication, so you have poor communication, you have limited communication, you have miscommunication with families, you have confusion. When you take away respect, you have anger, defensiveness. And when you take away equity, you have frustration. And when you take away commitment, you have a lack of drive and motivation. And so you can see it fits this model so well because each of those 5 dimensions are absolutely necessary in order to build trust. So one of the things that they talk about in the book that I thought was really significant or stood out to me is that this statement that it is how we interact with families that makes the most difference in their trust in us. So I want us to keep that in mind throughout the semester as we're practicing to build our communication and our collaboration skills, that's going to contribute to a better, more effective how, a better interaction with our families, which will enhance their trust in us. That again is like the why. It's the why of why we do this. So I'm not going to read through all of these because I know you can do those on your own, but figure 1.4, and we'll do a little bit of work with this in class, has all 5 of these dimensions defined. And so I want you to think about what are some specific examples of how you show this dimension of partnership in your school setting. All right, like I said, I'm not going to read through each of those. You have the slides and you read that. We're going to do a little work with this infomercial in class next week. So I'll skip that for the time being. But I want you to, again, thinking about this ecology of education, how are we infusing partnership within that trusting in what we do in the advocacy of enacting these social justice values and in the different settings that impact that trusting relationship, and then all the different areas that are on the points of the sun rays that give us the opportunity to be practicing these dimensions of partnership and trust. So in your text, it talks about different benefits to students, parents, professionals, and of course, the educational ecology. So keep a look at those. And then ends with kind of a little bit about social justice and how this is the concept that leads to action undertaken to counteract bias. It seeks a society in which prejudice is unacceptable. Social justice consists of 3 values: fairness, equality of opportunity, and dignity. Another piece that pulls out that it really stood out to me is that social justice is the antidote to bias and marginalization. So if you are against marginalizing our students and families who are from different cultural and linguistic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, family dynamics backgrounds, then you need to be moving into this space for social justice. So we'll keep revisiting this, particularly when we talk about equity in class. The social element of social justice refers to the interaction of an individual and a group. It refers to the welfare of individuals as members of a society. And it's really that interconnection. It's really that there's an African concept that it's the first time I heard it years and years ago, it really stayed with me and has been something that I think about, I meditate on, I reflect on, and I really truly believe I try and live by is the idea of Ubuntu. And it's this notion of that I am because you are. And it really speaks to our interconnectedness as a humanity, as a society, as a community. So the justice element of social justice is the state of being impartial or fair. It refers to the principle or ideal of just dealings and ethical action. Again, those 3 interrelated values of fairness, equal opportunity, and dignity. In the ecology, social justice values are those fundamental ways in which professionals, families, and students should act in relationship with each other. And they come full circle back to this trusting partnership is really how we can bring that social justice to life in the way that we interact and support and empower and engage with our families. There's a little bit more in your text. I'm not going to go through this entire slide with you because I think by now most of us are familiar with the differences between equality and equity and how it's really important to think about where the need for equality in our history, when we think about the laws that allowed us to have equal protection and equal opportunity for education for all students, and how equity really allows us to ensure that everybody's getting what they need. Another hero, Martin Luther King, the time is always right to do what is right. And so thinking about that as a Tala leader, how are you showing up in these spaces as an advocate for fighting for social justice, really ensuring that you're interacting with your families with equity and respect and commitment and with solid, constant, clear communication, are so important in terms of supporting the success of the student and the family within your classroom and school and community. All right, so that is it for this primer video. There'll be some additional instructions as we close out.